Well, it's now 6 o'clock, and I'd like to be able to welcome you to tonight's community forum. It's a privilege to have all of you here, and this is an excellent crowd. We had an outstanding crowd this morning with more than 90 people, had just a lot of good information, good conversation. Let me share how the format will work tonight. We'll begin with some opening statements, and then we'll hear and see a presentation from District Administrator Steve Board. After that, we'll open it up to questions, and we will look at the questions that you've submitted. We have those from earlier today, should we need those. And we'll try to wrap up by 7:15 at the latest, allowing anyone that would like to be able to attend the Pops concert featuring the Richland Center High School Band tonight. Concert begins at 7:30. So that's the evening, and I hope that when you leave here tonight, you realize that you made a good decision to come and be a part of what is happening. The morning session is posted on YouTube already, so a big thanks to Nova and to Rod Perry and to Ben Kelch for getting that done. But if you would search for Benjamin Kelch on YouTube, you're going to find this morning's forum posted there. Let me introduce to you those who are in front, and we'll begin our program this morning. And we'll begin with right here on my immediate right is Mike Wendell, who is Richland County's Corporation Counsel and the Richland Center City Attorney. Next to Mike is Jason Glassbrenner, Economic Development here in the city of Richland Center. Marty Brewer is right next to Tracy Gobin, who I'm going to introduce next. Tracy is the Director of Simon's Recreation Complex. And then the initial preview is over, Marty, so now your official introduction. Marty Brewer, the Chair of the Richland County Board. Todd Coppernall is our mayor here in the city of Richland Center. Next to Todd is Steve Board, who is the district administrator in the Richland District. Aaron Unbehan serves as the president of the Richland School District Board of Education. And on the far end of the table is Al Linz. Al is here this evening representing the foundation of Simon's Recreation Complex, of which he is a member of the board. Tonight we're going to begin with an opening from Mayor Todd Coppernall to talk about how this collaborative effort came together and what brings us all together in the community tonight here at the Phoenix Center. Mayor Todd.
Thanks, Ron, and welcome everyone. We had a great turnout this morning. I think they told me 94 people, and I see we've done it again, and I want to thank everyone for coming out. This is for you. The way this came about a year ago, just over. As you remember, the county was going through examining their budget, looking at some tough cuts. What might they have to do? And I called Marty, seated to my left, and I said, why don't you come down to the city building? And I called Steve and Aaron, and the four of us sat in the conference room in the city building, just an informal, it's not a committee, it's not an official anything, just free and open conversation on what the city, the county, and the school district were facing and what they're working on to look for opportunities to maybe collaborate and work together. And the reason that happened was because Marty was very honest with the public at the time, and he said one of the things the county was looking at was whether or not they'd be able to continue to help fund the Simons Center. Since Simons was built in 1987, it has received funding from both the city and the county. And Marty said, well, we don't know if we can do that. So I said, well, let's talk about that, because it would be a shame for our community to lose its indoor pool, such a unique feature to have in a small town. And that night, through the conversation, which weaved through several topics, Mr. Board made it known that the school district might have interest in East Hall, which of course had been part of the campus. And from that meeting forward, several back and forth took place between the county and the schools. And sure enough, the school district owns East Hall now and has placed a charter school in it, which is helping them grow enrollment, which not only helps the kids attending that, but each of those kids brings additional state aid, which helps our taxpayers. And that all came from the first conversation. One other one that's happened from that, and a lot of people deserve credit for this, at the city and the school district, is the community resource officer, which is jointly funded by the city and the schools. And if you don't know what that means, that's a police officer in the high school, which we now have, and we'll touch on that later when Steve does his presentation. He's going to tell you that one of the key concerns the public has had about our schools is safety and security in the schools. That's already been addressed now. There's a police officer up there, and that again came from collaboration between schools and cities. So we started to meet a little more consistently, talk about a lot of topics, and I don't remember, I think Dean Amundsen actually said, Dean actually said, let's do a public forum. And this was the first, and we hope the first day of many of these, that perhaps it could be a once or twice a year, whatever we need to do, event to just inform the public what we're all trying to do together for you and answer questions. That's how we got here. Thank you, Ron.
Let's pass the mic down to Mike Wendell, attorney for the City of Richland Center and Richland County's Corporation Council, for just a general overview in terms of the campus and the county as a whole. Mike?
Good evening, everybody. So I'm here to represent the county primarily because at my request, not too long ago, the county board appointed me the primary negotiator with the UW system. So I'm the one who's been having the contact with representatives from the UW system, trying to negotiate what the UW system's interest in the campus is going to be in the future, and how we can transition smoothly into whatever the future for the campus holds. Additionally, I'm here just to speak briefly on the financial state of the county, which is actually fairly optimistic. Our new administrator, Candace Pesch, was able to work with our outgoing interim administrator, develop a budget, which I know to be balanced and does not require any kind of referendum or increased property taxes. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that implemented, really impressed by the work that she was able to do. I think that's
Campus-wise?
Campus-wise, fair warning, I'm not going to be able to tell you everything that you probably need to know, either because I don't know it, or because the state of negotiations is such that it's in our community's best interest that I not share it at this time. So I do apologize in advance for that. However, hopefully you can trust that the board knows that I'm doing what I can to do my best to secure an asset for the community, rather than letting it potentially languish and turn into some kind of liability. You know, lawyers, we hate liability.
Well, let's pass the microphone down to Steve Board. And panelists, I'm going to ask if you would now move to the side so that you'll be able to see the PowerPoint. We'll pull the screen down so that you'll be able to see, and we'll turn things over to Steve.
Thank you, and good evening. It's great to see, as Mr. Fruit said earlier, great to see a great turnout here again tonight. We had, I believe, 94 this morning, and it's great to see a great deal of people here again tonight. One of the things that I had said to Phil Nee at the morning show last week was that he asked at the end of it, what would I hope to get out of this forum here tonight? And I said, I really hope that people show up to become informed voters, okay, and become informed people in our community. And this is happening, right? This is happening this morning. We were able to get a great deal of information out, and you folks were able to hear it directly from the folks that have this information. And so my goal here tonight is to inform you, to answer questions that you may have, as we all are, and to try to answer some specific questions as it relates to some of these things. So here's what I'm going to be talking about tonight, just a little bit of aligning our efforts. There are so many people that have played a part in this evening. I want to make sure that we talk about that. Spend the majority of time talking about the Richland School District referendum that's coming up in April. Why do we need it? How did we get to where we're at right now? What is included in it? And then ultimately, what is the tax impact? What does it cost the taxpayers of the Richland School District to have a referendum or one of these two questions? Thirdly, what does it look like for Simons and the Richland School District? What is the current status of that? What are we hoping to accomplish from that? And try to dispel any rumors that might be out there. and then finally conclude with some of the questions that I've already heard from numerous people, try to get the ball rolling, some of the thoughts, maybe answer some of those questions that you've heard, and just try to address the elephant in the room as it relates to those things. First thing is aligning our efforts, and I just want to say how proud I am to be part of this group of people. The people that we have up here on this panel are people that I highly respect, people that I admire, people who are doing great things in our community, representatives from the city, representatives from the community, from Simons, from the county, folks from the school district as well. And having people like that, putting their efforts together to put a forum on like this is really something cool. One of the things that I'm most excited about is that they're focusing not on the past, not dwelling on the problems, but they're looking forward, okay? I've been part of this community now for about 35 years. I've raised both my daughters here. One of them has graduated from Richland Center High School. The other is in Richland Center High School right now. My wife works in the community. I was a business owner for the better part of 17 years before moving into education and becoming an administrator. And one of the things that I've seen in this community is that we have a lot of really, really good people trying to do a lot of really, really good things, okay? But in the end, this is kind of what it looks like. And each and every one of those arrows represents a person or a small group of people or an organization that has a really good initiative and they're trying to move it in a certain direction. But in the end, we end up having a lot of different people moving in a lot of different directions, all of which might be good, right? But if you remember back from your high school physics course, when you have equal forces working in opposite direction, the net result is zero, and we don't get a lot of movement going. And so one of the things, as I mentioned, that I'm excited about this particular panel is that they're not focusing on the past, but instead they're solution-based and they're future-focused. And that's where we need to be as a community. We need to look forward. What are the problems that we need to have? Identify them. Let's find solutions for them. Let's work together in a collaborative effort and really start focusing on the future. This group of people is trying to do that. I encourage you to try to be part of that same thing, because when we take all of those arrows that are pointing in opposite directions and we do this, this is when we start moving our community forward. This is when we move our school district forward, our city forward, and our county forward. When we do this and we all get aligned in the right direction, and we may not all agree on every process or every point along the way, but if we can uniformly agree that the direction that we want to move is positive and into the future based on being solutions-based and future-focused, then I think we have the opportunity to make a positive change for our youth. This is a positive change for our families. This is a positive change for people coming into the Richland Center or Richland County. This affects business owners, and it affects everybody in a positive way. So I encourage you all to try to get our arrows aligned and try to be focusing on the future and not the past. All right, so with that, Richland School District referendum. You've heard that the Richland School District is going to referendum. If you haven't, now you know. Richland School District is going to referendum on April 2nd. And so I want to take a moment to address how did we get here and what does this look like? And the first thing is why? Why does the Richland School District need to go to referendum? School district finance is based off of the number of 4 to 18-year-olds that live and reside in the district, okay? So the number of 4-year-olds through 18-year-olds that live in the district is what the state bases our revenue limit off of. The more students that we have, school-age children that we have living in our district, the more revenue the school will get. The less students and school-age children that we have residing in our district, the fewer or less revenue that we would receive. This is what our population trend of the 4 to 18-year-olds in the Richland School District boundaries has looked like from 2012 all the way through 2023. You'll see that we peaked at 2016-17, and since then, our community has lost 200 children, adolescents, age 4 to 18, now down to about 1285. When we lose 200 students, that dramatically reduces the revenue that the school district has available. What does this look like if we break it out by age, or in this case by grade? Here's a chart of where we have the distribution of those 1,285 residents that are living in our district. 4K on the far left, each grade is represented by a bar, all the way to the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders on the far right. You'll notice quickly that those on the far right, the highest bars, are our 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students. Okay, it doesn't take a genius to understand that as these students graduate and as they leave the Richland School District and are no longer in that 18-year-old category where we get revenue for them, we will be replacing them with smaller demographics and smaller ages. This is something that's happening in our community. This is something that's happening statewide as we have fewer students in many rural areas. So here's again that chart. We're down to 1285. What does this look like moving forward? What are the projections for Richland County, for the Richland School District, and this age group? If we condense this data and we look at what does it look like in the future, we hired some really, really smart people from the University of Madison Applied Population Lab, and they make a living off of doing demographic studies. And this is what they found out. They ran 4 different models, okay, through simulations to determine, using different criteria to determine what does the Richland School District, specific to the Richland School District, what does this look like for population for the 4 to 18-year-olds residing in our community? Each of those 4 models is represented by one of those 4 lines. And you can quickly see that regardless of which one of those 4 lines you choose to believe is accurate, all 4 of them are pointing in the same direction, and that is declining. Declining number of students age 4 to 18 that are residing in our community. This is something that is not just a school district problem, this is a community problem. We need to find ways to attract more families, to have more students, more children residing in our county and in our school district. If you look at that in the near 6 years from now, these projections are anywhere from losing 100 to 160 school-age children in the Richland School District in 6 years. What does that mean from a revenue standpoint? We get $11,563 per student is what we are allowed to bring in for revenue. If you take 100 students on the low end of that model, that's $1.1 million that we will no longer have available to us, and all the way up to $1.8 million on the high end of those models. Probably going to fall somewhere in the middle, but the reality is these are really large numbers, and these are going to be a lack of revenue that the school district is going to receive, again, because we simply don't have the number of children living in our district any longer. You might have heard last summer that the state passed this biennial budget, a 2-year budget at the state level, and they made this big deal about adding additional funding to education, $325 per student. And simple math would say $325 times over 1,200 kids, hey, that's pushing $400,000. The reality is that's politicians' math, okay? Because the very first thing that they did was said, you no longer get the $253 a student that we were giving you. So we're going to pull that away, and then we're going to replace it with $325 of quote-unquote new money. The net result for the Richland School District was $72 a kid. And while that was very well welcomed, that $80,000 to $90,000 in additional revenue was not what we anticipated when the state said they were going to give school districts $325 of additional revenue in funding, okay? This was taken away by what's called the hold harmless exemption. Most rural school districts in the state of Wisconsin dealt with the same phenomenon. To what degree, I do not know, but the very first thing that the state did was you have to buy that back. We're going to pull that revenue away, and then we're going to tack it on. So it truly was not $325 in additional money. You might also be thinking, what about other school districts? If every school district or many school districts in the state of Wisconsin have this hold harmless, this politician's math, so to speak, that's going on, and many school districts in the state of Wisconsin are declining enrollment and declining school-age children, why aren't other school districts going to referendum? And the truth is they are. Okay? If you look at the school district map of Wisconsin over the last 4 years, every one of these shaded areas, these are school district boundaries, not county boundaries, have gone to referendum. The orange represents capital referendums for buildings and property. The yellow represents operational referendums, and the gray represents those districts who have gone in both in the last 3 years. What does that look like in 2024? Everything in green, these are school districts that are going to referendum in February of 2024 or April of 2024. This is the vast majority of school districts in the state of Wisconsin. Because of the way the funding is done, many school districts have to go to referendum in order to meet the needs of their educational programming. And you can see the better part of 2/3 of our counties, of our districts have done that in the last 4 years, and many of them are doing it right now. This does not include those that have not decided to go in either August or November. November is historically the time when most referendums are going on the ballot. Those are not included in here. So I suspect that if you were to look at this chart in December of this year, or as we get closer to November, it would be even more filled in than it is right now. All right, so how did we get to this point? How did we decide what we were going to do and what we were going to ask the communities to consider? We hired a company called the Morris Leatherman Group, the Morris Leatherman Company out of the Twin Cities. They have 30 years of expertise in community research and in surveying communities and determining what the community will support and what the tax tolerance is about. And with that, they told us financially that people in the community are willing to support a $15 a month increase on their taxes so long as it was geared towards the priorities that they felt were important. And so those priorities, many things were asked. Maybe some of you received a phone call from the Morris Leatherman Group in December. Here's what they did. I should back up here a little bit. They sampled 400 people in our resident. They spent an average of 7 minutes on the phone with each one of them. This was done the old-fashioned way. It was not a QR code. It was not an electronic survey. This was calling people on the phone and speaking with them. And one of the things that they determined was that they wanted to make sure that they hit every demographic group that resides in the community. They didn't just want to send this out and just hit the first 400 people that were willing to answer the phone. They hit every demographic group, from those that just recently graduated from high school, to the empty nesters, to the retired folks, to the people with children in our district, to make sure that everybody in our community was represented. And they did that with statistical significance. And so it wasn't just one or two people, but they reached that level of where they classify as statistical significance in each of those demographic groups. And so what we did was we listened to the results of that survey. We listened to the experts that talked to the people in our community, and they asked them 9 priorities on what this, oops, I'm sorry, I'm way ahead of myself. So I thought that, okay, I'm gonna keep going here. All right, so what they came up with was question 1 on the referendum revolves around an operating referendum that would be for non-recurring purposes. Non-recurring, meaning this is not money that stays on the tax roll forever. The 2016 referendum was a referendum that is on forever. The 2020 referendum is the same way. This is a non-recurring referendum asking for $2.3 million in additional funding for the 24-25 school year, increasing that by $100,000 each of the next 3 years, capping out at the 27-28 school year at $2.6 million. At that point, school district would have to go back to the public because this referendum would fall off the books, okay? And so we chose, and the school board decided to support that we would do a 4-year non-recurring referendum. So this does not continue to go on forever. We would do that for 2 big reasons. One, we wanted to show the public that we are making positive change, and this gives us 4 years to do that. This gives us 4 years to earn, not ask for the trust of the community, but to earn the trust of the community and to show the public that the school district is being responsible financially and moving the school district in the right direction. The second reason that we chose 4 years was because if you look at that demographic breakdown of our class sizes, our biggest 4 class sizes are in our upper 4 classes, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th, and 12th grade. Those 4 classes will have graduated at the end of the 27-28 school year. This will allow us to be what we hope to be in a situation where we're much more stable with enrollment, can reanalyze what the needs of the school district are, and communicate that to the public. That operational referendum would be used to, 1, keep up with that lost revenue that I talked about earlier. Because we have fewer students residing in our community, we have less revenue available to the school district. So it would be used to keep up with that lost revenue. It would also be used to keep up with increased expenses. Everyone in the room knows that things cost more now than they did just a few short years ago. All right? Those of you who have received wage increases probably realize that your wage increases don't keep up with the rate of inflation. Those of you who are on a fixed income, things are even tighter. Expenses have gone up, your revenues have stayed the same. The school district is in a situation where expenses have gone up and we actually have less revenue to work with. And so we need to be able to keep up with those increased expenses that are going on. The programming opportunities, the things that are available to our students, we need to get back to where the Richland School District is a school district of envy, to where we have the best educational opportunities, that we have the best resources available to our students. We have outdated curriculum that's going on right now. We need to get that updated. We need to be able to have enrichment opportunities, get our students on more field trips, get them to experience things outside of our school walls. We simply don't have the funding. We're grateful that we have many wonderful people in our community that donate to these causes, but it simply isn't enough, and we can't do it for as many students as we would really like to. So we really want to make sure that we can enhance our programming. And then lastly, we simply need to keep up with paying our teachers and our staff competitive wages. All right, the wage increases that are going on around the state, the school district has made great strides in moving our staff along, but we still continue to lose good quality staff and teachers to neighboring districts around the area simply because they can pay them more. And because of their referendums that they've done in the past and the way that their funding is structured, they're able to offer them a better salary, and we're losing good quality veteran teachers that are moving on to other school districts simply because they can make more. And we've really got to put a stop to that. We want our best teachers working for the Richland School District. This is from the Federal Reserve economic data. This is a chart of the average wage over the course of several years, with the gray vertical line to the right of your screen representing 2020. You'll notice that there's a pretty steady increase in wages, but it's not that steep until you hit 2020. And then 2020, when the pandemic hit and people were forced to pay employees more money over the course of time, then these wages have increased dramatically. We have not been able to keep up with that as a school district. I know this is something that many of our local businesses are facing as well. You simply have to pay people more money. I'm a big fan of paying top quality people, top quality dollar. They're invaluable to our organization. All right, so what will this cost you, right? It all sounds great. We'll pay people more money. We'll make sure we have more opportunities for our staff. What's this going to cost the taxpayers? Question 1 on the referendum ballot in April is going to talk about the escalating revenue limit, starting at 2.3, working way up to 2.6 million, and it's going to be for expenses relating to operating, pay, compensation, etc. That will cost the taxpayers in the Richland School District $0. Okay, this will be a net impact of 0 for the taxpayers. And you might wonder, how can you possibly pass a referendum in the amount of $2 million plus and not have a tax impact to the residents? And the answer is simply, back in 2020, the district took a different strategy in how it prepaid its debt and structured its debt. It used a strategy called defeasance, to where we could become a little bit more aggressive in paying off our debt. By doing so, because we had about $8.7 million of debt back in 2016, that we were not scheduled to make 1 cent of principal payment until 2026. It was interest-only payments going down the drain to people who borrowed the money. All right, in 2020, we restructured that debt using a strategy called defeasance to do that. And by using that strategy, it has now put us in a position where we can use this referendum money, stop that strategy, and it will be at a 0 tax rate increase to the public. So literally 0 increase for this referendum. The second question, in terms of the what, is revolving around property and our buildings, okay? And so when the district borrows money for property, they do it in the form of a bond. It works very similar to how many of you have mortgaged a home or financed a vehicle. A bond is a loan that is given to us with interest, and we pay that back over 20 years. That's the maximum by law that you can pay back a bond, and that's done over 20 years, and that's how all school financing is done when it comes to capital improvement projects. I talked about those priorities that the Morris Leatherman Group had talked about to the community stakeholders, and these are the 9 priorities that were supported at over 50% by the stakeholders in our community. Starting at 82% on the top is safety and security, having our buildings safe for our students and our staff. They can never be safe enough. Everything that's in green there, the people supported it. What's in red was the percentage of people who opposed it. And then the small sliver to the far right in yellow are those that were unsure or did not know enough about that particular topic to form an opinion. Number 2 on the list was ADA and accessibility issues that we have. We have many places throughout our district that simply are not accessible and wheelchair friendly for those folks that need to have that accessibility available to them. 77% supported that. Third on the list at 74% was tech ed upgrades to our technical education classrooms. When we built our quote-unquote new high school, which by the way is now almost 30 years old, okay, just let that sink in for a second, that new high school is 28 plus years old, all right? Some of the original tech ed equipment from the old high school was brought with it. That is outdated and antiquated equipment and is not preparing our students properly for life after high school. Number 4 was air conditioning at the primary school and the intermediate school. I know that this was a topic of contention back in 2016. It was part of the scope that they wanted to try to do in that project. The bids came in higher than they anticipated, and at an open session, the board decided to pull air conditioning out of that scope of project back in 2016 because they didn't have the funds to be able to do all of it based on where the bids came in at. That's something that we need to get addressed to make sure that our staff and our students are learning and being educated in a comfortable environment regardless of what the conditions outside are. 74% of the people supported that. 73% supported energy efficiency upgrading, making sure that our lights are LED, that we have good seals on our windows, that our doors are making a good seal, that we have good insulation, those kinds of energy efficiency upgrades. 68% supported deferred maintenance, things that we just need to fix. We have a leaky roof up at the high school that we need to get fixed. We've got hard surface areas. If you've ever been to parent drop-off or pickup at the primary school or the intermediate school at about 10 to 8 or 10 after 3, you'll notice that it is problematic. It is not necessarily the safest environment to be dropping little kids off. We want to make sure that we have a safe environment there and to resurface that area. 59% supported auditorium upgrades. Again, we have a wonderful and beautiful facility at our Richland Center High School auditorium, but the equipment that we use in there for lighting and sound is outdated. 55% of the public supported artificial turf on our athletic fields, and 55% also supported the addition or the building of a field house or a gymnasium, okay? And so with that, as I mentioned, the Morris Leatherman Group said that while people are willing to support these 9 things, at least the majority of the people, their pocketbooks don't support all of these things when it comes to what it actually is going to cost. In other words, the people want to support this, but they financially can only handle a certain amount. And so they told us the average taxpayer in the school district can afford a $15 per month increase in their property taxes. Do not exceed that, and make sure that you stick to the priorities that are here. And so we started working with our financial consultants, and we came up with a package to determine what that would look like. And so what we would do is, from a capital referendum, we would identify the safety, security. You can see some and accessibility issues. We've got hard surface areas that are very rough, very problematic for wheelchair. Our bathrooms throughout the district are outdated and not up to code from an accessibility standpoint, and that parent pickup and drop-off is problematic at the 2 elementary buildings. Our tech ed upgrades. As I said, we are not preparing our students for life after high school to be valuable people in our workforce and in our community if they choose not to go to college, simply because many of the things that we have in our tech ed spaces are not up to date. Some of it's not safe, it doesn't get used, some of it is just not used, that technology is not used anymore, and that needs to be upgraded so that we can provide a good learning environment for those students. Repairs and energy efficiencies, roofs and energy efficiencies. Again, we've got leaky roofs, we've got lights that are not LED, and we've got, again, on the new high school, that far right picture there is some rusty vents that simply don't operate well up on the roof. Again, those are pushing 30 years old. We've also got windows throughout our primary school and our intermediate school. Some of them do not shut. The ones that do not shut well. Some of them that shut do not open. We've got foundational cracking, and then we've got many of our exterior envelope and doors that have rusted and are showing signs of wear and tear and simply allowing not a good seal to exist, and they allow a draft to come in or out. Our auditorium, as I mentioned, much outdated equipment, pushing 28 years old on that stuff. We have a lot of community folks that come into our auditorium and use this for community events, and almost every one of them now bring their own lighting and sound equipment into our auditorium because of the outdated equipment that currently exists in those spaces. It just simply doesn't work for the performances that they're looking to have. So we need to get some upgrades to the infrastructure at our auditorium. So that's where they did the top 7 things. This would be a $27,160,000 project that consists of those top 7 priorities. The 7 priorities, again, being safety and security, ADA and accessibility issues, technical education upgrades, air conditioning to the primary school and the intermediate school, energy efficiencies, deferred maintenance in roofing, parking lots, etc., and auditorium upgrades. They are not including the artificial turf or the field house and the gymnasium in this referendum. It is these 7 things and these 7 things only. So question 2 will look like, and what will this cost taxpayers? This will be a question that revolves around the issuing of bonds in the amount of $27,160,000, and that tax increase will be $14.76 per month to the average homeowner in the Richland School District. Average homeowner being a homeowner who owns a property value of $161,000. We realize some people have more property than that. Some people certainly have less property than that. But according to 2023 data, the Richland School District average property value is $161,000. That is a tax rate increase or a mill rate increase of $1.10 per thousand for this question. Okay, right now our current mill rate is $9.12 per thousand. It's been that way for the last 3 or 4 years. This would bump it up to $10.22 per $1,000 of property value if this question were to pass. All right, so talking about Simons and the Richland School District and what that looks like and why this has come into play, because some of you may have heard this. I heard the school district is taking over Simons. School district is not taking over Simons, all right? What the school district wants to do is make sure that Simons is a viable part of our community long term. And so this is not part of the referendum. We are not including a field house or a gymnasium into the referendum. We've got one available to us right just 400 yards away, okay? But Simons is not part of the referendum. We simply want to work with the folks that are up here. We want to work with the county, we want to work with the community, we want to work with the city, and we want to work with the Simons Foundation Board to make sure that we have a viable option to make sure that Simons and that gymnasium are part of our community long term. This is community facilities, and if we can be part of a solution for that, then that's something that we want to help with. If there's other options out there, we're happy to support those as well. But this is not part of this referendum, and that's for some ongoing discussions that we have. What the school district really needs as it relates to the campus and that Simons area is the gymnasium. When we moved our 7th and 8th graders up to the high school after the 2020 school year, we now have some crammed space in our high school for PE space and for extracurricular activities. And it's problematic and expensive to bus our students after school to the intermediate school, which is the gym that they used to use. And there's also constraints there because the after-school program that goes on for daycare at both the primary school and the intermediate school uses those spaces. We do have it available once in a while. Prior to this year, we had the ability to use the campus gymnasium through an MOU that we had with the county and UW. okay? Because of the way the UW has pulled out of that facility and the way that that is structured at this point, we don't have the ability to use the gym at this moment in time. So we are feeling the pinch right now and not having that extra gym. But again, in the big picture, if the Richland School District can be part of a solution moving forward for Simons and that gym and keep that part of our community, not just for the school district, but for our entire community, then we want to make sure that we're part of that solution. Okay, so here are some common questions that I've heard, and let's address the elephant in the room. Some of these things you may be thinking, and maybe I can get ahead of it by simply just addressing them right away. How will I know that the money will be spent on the things you're saying that they're going to be spent on? You may have heard rumors, you may have heard things that happened back in 2016. I said air conditioning was supposed to be part of that project, okay? And it got taken out because the scope was too big. How do we know that's not going to happen again this year? All right? And the reason is because we have listed specifically and individually each of those 7 priorities in the referendum question, okay? As opposed to using general language of district-wide improvements or things along those lines, which means that there's a lot of different ways you can make district-wide improvements. We have specifically listed each of those 7 priorities in the question, which means that we will be bound by state law to fulfill that. We must make sure that we spend money on safety and security, ADA, tech ed upgrades, air conditioning at the primary and the intermediate school, energy efficiency, deferred maintenance, and auditorium upgrades, okay? So that's the difference between this referendum and perhaps past referendums. Another question, what happens if they fail? Okay, back in 2020, I heard people say, well, you didn't tell us what would happen if these didn't pass, right? And so I'm going to tell you what will happen if these don't pass. If question 1 fails, we are going to be forced to eliminate 6.5 full-time positions for the 24-25 school year. We are already planning on going down 1. We went down 1 administrator for the start of the 23-24 school year. We're going to go down another administrator or upper management position for the start of the 24-25 school year. That will happen regardless. All right. However, the other 5.5 positions, if this doesn't pass, will need to be eliminated. And that will have a direct impact on the educational opportunities that we're able to offer. We will have larger class sizes. We will not have some of the people in the positions that they're currently in. And so those will be eliminated for the start of the 24-25 school year if this doesn't pass in April. And again, I would remind you that question 1 revolves around that $2.3 million in non-recurring revenue, and it comes at a no tax rate change. What about question number 2? What if question 2 fails? If question 2 fails, we're simply going to be forced to live in the same buildings that we're currently operating in. We're going to continue to have some leaky roofs up at the high school. We're going to continue to not have energy efficiency upgrades. We're going to continue to have restrooms and areas that are not ADA accessible. We're going to continue to not have climate control at primary school and the intermediate school. And we're just going to continue to push this down the road. Even if we do some patchwork on our roof, even if we do some patchwork on doors and windows, it is just going to be a Band-Aid. Eventually, we're going to have to make sure that we get these things fixed, or our buildings are just going to become diminishing assets. And that will cost us more down the road. This same referendum could have been done for about $21 million 2 years ago, maybe as little as 17 4 years ago, probably going to be $2 to $4 million in a couple of years. So the longer we push it down the road, the more expensive things are going to be, because inflation is going to continue to be real. Question, why can't the school do more to bring students back? Okay, I hear this a lot. What is the school district doing? We hear about declining enrollment. We can hear about other students leaving the school district to go elsewhere. All right, what are we doing? Why can't we do more? I think we're trying to do a lot, but anybody who has been involved in business knows that they can't just wake up on a random Tuesday morning and say, today we're going to sell more product. Right? It takes time. It takes a marketing plan. It takes a strategy. It takes good communication, and that's what we're trying to do. I will say, in 1 year, we have brought back 20 students. 20 students who have left our district to go to other districts, we brought them back this year. That number continues to increase throughout the course of this year. Do we have a ways to go? Absolutely. we still have over 200 students that are going to other districts, okay? We want to make sure that we bring them back to our school district. We want to make sure that we have the best educational programming and the best staff to make sure that we can provide the best educational experience possible. We are addressing it, we're not avoiding it, and we're trying to make progress, and we have started to see these numbers swing back in a positive direction, but it won't change overnight. And then I also get this question, why doesn't the school district just budget for their expenses? If they know they've got a roof that's going to need to be put on in 20 years, why don't they start saving for it now? If they know that the parking lot's only got 7 years left, why don't they start saving for it now? That's what we all do as individuals with our homes and our private finances. Why doesn't the school district do that? The reality is it would force us to eliminate staff and programming opportunities elsewhere. And I will just use one small example. The Richland Center High School roof. There's 220,000 square feet on that roof. That roof replacement is about $4 million. So even if we said right now, we're going to start saving money so that in 20 years we can put a new roof on the Richland Center High School, we would have to set aside $200,000 a year. $200,000 a year, the equivalent of about 3 teachers, we would have to eliminate in order to save money to be able to have enough money in 20 years to finance that roof. And that's just the roof. That doesn't have anything to do with the parking lots. It's not any of the other roofs, any of the other buildings that we have. And so this is why so many school districts in the state of Wisconsin have to go to referendum, because the funding formulas simply don't work for them to keep up with expenses and to be able to maintain the maintenance that they have on their buildings. That's all I have for tonight. I appreciate your time and your attentiveness to this. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Ron Fruit, and we'll open it up to some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. I'll have the panelists come back and join me here. And we'll get the screen up where you can see well. Interestingly, many of the questions that you've submitted tonight, and they are good ones, are similar to what we addressed earlier today. There are some variants, and we'll do our best to try to get to all of them as we are able this evening. Mayor Coppernoll, you will be first up. If you want to grab that microphone, please. Our submitter asked this evening, if or when is the city going to reassess home values, wondering what that average price might change and how things might work?
Yeah, great question. It was asked this morning too. The city council actually budgeted to have the properties in the city reevaluated last year. The money's still there to do it. It will be done as soon as we can get a provider out here to do it. It's mandated by state law, it must be done. And we're actually overdue for it, which is why we made the provision and the budgeting to do it. What we found is in this part of the state, there are not a lot of providers that do this. And when COVID came up, they weren't able to go out and do their work, and they found themselves with a backlog of communities that they're serving, and they're just working through that. What a typical increase might look like, I can't answer for you. They'll do that. It all depends on your structure, your neighborhood. There's a lot of variables. I don't know exactly what it would do to any individual property. I do know it must be done by state law, and the money's been budgeted to do it. So our intent is to do it this year. Again, that assumes we can get a provider out here to do it, and if not, it would be next year.
Steve, I'm going to direct the next question to you, and it's in the same light. Wondering if the school district has factored in what a reevaluation of the city might mean to the mill rate and its impact to the school district and its taxpayers.
Yeah, so the mill rate for the county and the city is based off of assessed value. The mill rate for a school district is based off your equalized or fair market value. So you'll see 2 different mill rates often being used depending on which municipality is using it. And that's a state requirement, okay, that they don't compare apples to apples. It's like inches and centimeters, all right? But you will see on your tax bill that there is an assessed value, and then there is a ratio that determines your fair market value. That fair market value comes from the state, and so even if there is a reassessment in property, if the fair market value doesn't change, that's where the school district and the referendum school tax would come into play. all right? There is inflationary rates, so as your property becomes more increase in value through inflation, through natural inflation, then there's still, even at a zero tax rate increase, you still may see an increase if you simply own more property value from that regard. But the simple answer is the fair market value is already adjusted for some of those things, and so the ratio would simply change, not necessarily the fair market value. It certainly could as well, but they're two completely independent things.
Okay, we'll pass the mic down to Attorney Wendell here, Mike Wendell. Our next submitter wants to know, Mike, about the Roadrunner gym, when it might be available to the county and when the community might have opportunity to use it.
Sure, and I'm going to use this opportunity just to pitch the Campus Reconfiguration Committee, which is relevant to this question and any other questions people may have about any proposed use of the campus. The county board commissioned a committee, the Campus Reconfiguration Committee, when these developments were occurring, so that we would not be caught with our pants down if we needed to make alternative use of the buildings that comprise the campus. What the committee has done most recently is commissioned an architectural firm to do a space and needs assessment for not just the campus buildings, but all county-owned buildings. The last meeting of the Campus Reconfiguration Committee, they approved that, and then we'll begin that process. I don't have an exact date on that, but my understanding is the part of the process will be interviews with stakeholders, hopefully not just those within the county, but citizenry and others as well. The reason that I raise that is that once we have an idea of the condition of the buildings, what we may or may not be able to do with them, what the Campus Reconfiguration Committee is envisioned to do is develop a procedure by which people can submit ideas for proposed uses. So, you know, renting out the Roadrunner gym or something along those lines. We're currently precluded from doing so because the UW system is the tenant of the campus. So no more than if you rented an apartment, a landlord couldn't come in and throw a party in your apartment. We can't go in and make use of these structures even though the county owns them because they are currently occupied. So the questioner, you know, wants to use the Roadrunner gym. What would happen is we'd get the space needs assessment report. We'd understand, well, that's certainly a possibility that we'd look to, and then we would solicit a proposal for what making use of the gym might look like, whether it becomes kind of a community asset and people can rent it out, whether, you know, it's taken over by another organization, but the goal of the Campus Reconfiguration Committee is to ensure that every idea, because there are tons, every idea gets a fair shot and fair consideration. So to answer the actual question, I do not know. Right now, the only firm deadline that I can give people is 2042, because that's when the lease with the UW system ends. Anything short of that is, again, my job, and I promise you I'm working on it. But I cannot give any solid commitments for deadlines or timeframes at this point.
And I'm going to leave you with the microphone, if you would, Mike, and maybe you've just answered this, but let me rephrase this question that's been submitted tonight by one in attendance this evening. Do you feel realistically that the county can start making hardcore decisions about the future of the campus by the 1st of July?
So I am a relative newcomer to the county, but I also have a unique perspective, and so the answer to that is it has to. We have put off and delayed and hedged on every possible controversial issue for long enough that now we are left with nothing but difficult choices. So the county has to be ready to make these decisions because those are the only decisions that are left to it. I, work closely with the board, and I believe that there's an understanding of that and an appetite to make real change. It's going to be disruptive, but the goal of everyone that I've spoken with and worked with is to make these changes to improve the community.
Chairman Brewer, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I believe there are 9 school districts in Richland County. And part of the thought process is, you heard from Steve Board, and it makes a lot of sense, the things that he said. And for the Richland School District to utilize the gymnasium, for instance. However, there are 8 other school districts in the county, and those are all supported by taxpayers in various areas of the county. So when we think of the county, we have to think about the greater area, not simply the city of Richland Center, which is a big part of the county. I mean, yes, we're very interested in Richland Center and the Richland School District, but we have to consider all areas, and that makes the thought process and the decision-making more difficult. And I agree with Mike Wendell. We are at the point where we must make decisions. The name of the committee, weird name, Reconfiguration Committee. Why would we call it that? My idea, I wanted to get away from repurposing, because frankly, I don't see how many of the buildings out there can be repurposed. Maybe some of them can, but not all of them. So it's not simply a matter of moving new tenants in, doing something else in the buildings. The gym obviously can be repurposed as a high school or student gym, but other areas, other buildings cannot.
Let's pass the microphone to Mayor Todd. Certainly you've talked about it so many times, Mayor, about how we need housing, that becomes one of the key talking points that you have. Could you discuss the potential or the feeling in regards to developing land behind the campus for potential single-family housing units for the city of Richland Center?
Sure, I'd be happy to. This came up first, about 3 years ago now. It was proposed. At that time, of course, we didn't know the campus would be closed. Now, it was tabled at the time, but I will leave this open when I'm done commenting to Marty as well, if he has something to say. I believe that the county will be open to making some of that land available. And when I say some of that land, think of where the cornfields have always been on the hill. Perhaps being made available for single-family homes. The city is in favor. Obviously, it's complex. You have to get utility hookups in there. You'll need a street in there. This stuff costs millions of dollars. So this wouldn't be something that would happen in a couple of meetings, but I'm in favor 100% of putting that up there. And I want to make the public aware, Hive Drive is now a city street with a fine bridge that's been inspected several times. We're told it's got decades of life. So we have an access point to that property from the highway. Then the question would be exactly how to configure homes and how to put a road in there. A lot of you probably know Dale Bender, who ran City Electric for many years. He came to me about 2 years ago, and to Jason Glassbrenner. He had sketched out what he thought were lots for 17 houses that he thought would fit across that hill where the cornfield is. That's just an example. No plan has been chosen or anything, but I know myself and Mr. Glassbrenner at least, and I would assume the City Council, are in favor of that. What we run into here a lot with proposed housing developments, you have to realize the city exists in a bowl surrounded by steep hills, and those steep hills, they get difficult to build in a lot of places. It's very expensive to build on top of a hill. Sometimes you can't get water up there, things like that. It just increased the cost. And you have to think about stormwater runoff. If you're putting homes up there, what about the guy down there? There's all kinds of obstacles. We also have a river here that creates more floodplain than I think a lot of people realize we deal with. So what we run into is, where can you build? It's a bigger challenge than a lot of our neighboring communities have to deal with, just based on the terrain. That makes that a very desirable property to put houses. And understand, at the campus, there's a creek, which means a lot of that land is also floodplain, okay? Within a few feet of the gymnasium. is floodplain. That's why the buildings were placed exactly where they are. The whole parking area is floodplain. So there's a lot of that out there that you couldn't build homes on, but as you get further back behind the campus buildings, you could. Marty, do you want to add to that? You don't.
As usual, the mayor has done a splendid job.
Mr. Wendell, did you have anything else from the county on it? Okay.
So I will say, that, according to a resolution it passed, the position of the county board remains that that land be at least partially set aside for housing with an emphasis on sustainability, I believe. It's been a while since I've looked at that resolution, but the county has already made an official act indicating that it would be on board for such use.
Very good. Steve Board will direct the next question to you. Does the Richland School District desire to own or share ownership of Simons? And if, what involvement, how scheduling would work or anything like that? Could you address that subject, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk conceptually. And again, my goal here is to find a solution with the collaboration efforts of everyone up here to make sure that Simons remains a viable part of our community long term. If the school district were to have some say in Simons, very conceptual level, I have pitched the idea that wouldn't it be cool if we could have every second grader take swimming lessons at Simons? Wouldn't it be equally unique to have every fifth grader take second level swimming lessons at Simons? Wouldn't it be cool if every freshman or sophomore took lifeguarding course at Simons? They can then help teach the swimming lessons to our second graders and our fifth graders. They can help employ the lifeguarding shortage that we have at both Simons and at the Aquatic Center. Tracy spoke earlier this morning about the shortage of lifeguards and therefore limiting the hours at Simons. So this is just one idea, right? This is not something that the school district would want to do and just shut it down to the public. We want to work with the public. If we were to have it, we would run the funding through what's called our Community Service Fund, which allows us to be completely separate from the general operating funds of the school district and to have a community pool. Many school districts in the state of Wisconsin have pools like this. Sauk Prairie, Kickapoo has one, obviously at a different scale, but this is something that is not unique, and there are many, many really good programming opportunities for our youth, wellness opportunities for our staff, and community partnerships that can be built with the school district having Simons under their umbrella.
Let's shift the microphone then to Tracy Gobin, and then from there we'll go to Al Linz. Let's talk a little bit about what Steve has introduced, Tracy, because there was a concern this morning. Why can't Simons provide more opportunities? We have this beautiful asset in our pool. Why can't we as a community access it more?
Yeah, so the swimming pool at Simons, the state has rules on what we can do there because of the size of our swimming pool. So the pool, if you go to most hotels, you'll see that they're very small pools there. And the reasoning behind that is because under a certain surface area of water, you don't have to have a lifeguard on duty. Where the Simons swimming pool is so large that it is a requirement that to have anybody into the swimming pool, we must have a lifeguard on duty, regardless of the person's age. We have to have a lifeguard on duty. So right now, with the campus not having students at it, our main pull for lifeguards is high school students. I mean, we do have some adults that do lifeguard, but that's rarer than what we have. Majority is high school students. So during the school year and school days, to find lifeguards to come in so we could have longer hours during the day, they're in school learning. That's their free education that we want them to have, so they can't come in and lifeguard during the daytime hours. So that does kind of restrict us on opening our hours up longer and more for the swimming pool, which I know a lot of people would enjoy being able to come in more, but the restrictions with the lifeguards is kind of what holds us back. And I'll do this, what I did earlier today. If anybody wants to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to be a lifeguard, just raise it. I'll come find you after the meeting and we'll get you set up with a lifeguarding class to open those hours up more too. So
Let's pass it down to Al, talking about an interesting concept that may merit very well consideration.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second because I also want to make sure that it's important. I mentioned the gym earlier, and if, again, this is a big if, but if the school district were to acquire Simons, we would hope that we would also be able to acquire the gymnasium, because while we do need to use it for programming opportunities and PE classes and some extracurricular opportunities for our students, there's be a lot of times there where this can be a community gym. It could be available for pickleball people. It could be available for walking trails, for the community to be able to get involved and to truly have another community gym. So I do think they go hand in hand, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. Mr. Lenz?
Yep. What Tracy was referring to, the state of Illinois has what's called adult-only swimming. It's an administrative rule at the state level. Basically what that means is that if there's adult-only swimming, there does not have to be a lifeguard on duty. And the way the rules read in Illinois is that as long as you have people 16 years of age and older swimming, you don't need a lifeguard. That would be an option to open up the pool at Simons to more people. I contacted Howard Markline to see if that was a possibility. He indicated it would be. Both bodies of our state legislature and the governor would have to sign off on it. And then it would take about another few months, about 7 months in total, to actually get this administrative rule changed. I made a presentation to the natatorium board a few months ago, and so far there's been no action. What I asked the natatorium board to do was adopt a resolution that could be sent on to Howard Markline so that he could start working it at the state level. I think that there's other pools around the state. Tracy will tell you the shortage of lifeguards is not just a local thing, it's a national thing. And I'm sure there's other pools around the state that could benefit from this administrative rule change as well. So it's something I would like to see, maybe, if you're interested in this, contact the members of the natatorium board, ask them to move this forward. And, this would be an opportunity to get the pool opened up to more people. I'm not sure the schedule at the pool right now, but I don't think there's any lifeguards on duty in the early afternoon. So that would be a great time to have adult swimming. But we just have to get the administrative rule changed.
Steve Board, District Administrator, next question will pose to you, please. Does the district have a formula to determine the amount of dollars that would go to staff under the operational referendum dollars?
Not a formula. We are working internally to try to come up with a proposal, and then we would want to be talking to our different employee groups and make sure that those are competitive. We have a variety of different employee groups ranging from our support staff and our clerical and our aides and food service to IT technicians to our teacher staff. All of them, we would want to do a comparative study. We've tried to look at other school districts around the state of Wisconsin that are similarly sized to us and try to get our teachers at the 66th percentile, top of the middle third, bottom of the top third mentality. We want to move the needle further. We want to look at what our surrounding school districts paying and get our teachers and our staff in a situation where they can work for a great school district, but also be paid at a wage that is fair and is comparable to the surrounding districts so that we're not continuing to lose them. An exact formula of what that looks like, I don't have that at this time.
Steve, I'll have you hold the microphone if you will. We have a question that has been submitted that is quite specific, wanting to know a number of percentages and numbers. John Bosworth, where are you at tonight? I know you're here. There's John. And we touched base with John on this. If this is your question, feel free to visit with John, and those numbers can be received for you. But of this question, Steve, I want to direct this one to you. This submitter asks, the things that will happen, and they say 5.5 things, if the referendum does not pass.
What are the exact positions?
Yeah.
That is yet to be determined. We are talking internally on how we can best structure what that looks like at all three buildings and across the district. We don't want to lock it in to say we're going to eliminate a third grade teaching position or a high school Spanish position or whatever the course may be. We don't want to lock it into that level, because if the referendum does not pass, and if we are forced to make cuts, if we can do that through attrition, then that would be the most user-friendly for everybody involved. Whether or not that actually works out that way, we don't know. We're having those discussions internally. We know that we would have to go down 5.5 across the district, but to what that looks like exactly at this point, we don't know. It would probably affect, most likely affect all 3 buildings in some capacity at teachers.
Another submitter tonight, Steve, asked the question wondering about sources of information to be able to understand the amount of money spent and invested used each month in the Richland School District. Are those numbers available to the public?
So there's a lot of resources available. Of course, if there's anything that you can't find or you don't have access to, you can certainly contact John Bosworth or myself. But all of our board meetings and all of our board minutes and all of our board publications are online. We just launched a new website today, I believe, or over the weekend. And so we're working through that. But all of this information in terms of what the district spends money on, every single board meeting, the board approves expenditures, and Mr. Bosworth would notify the board and the public of any large transfers or large revenues that we've received in. So that is all, every single line item is in every single board meeting that our board approves, from the statement of cash and the approval of invoices. And if anybody has any specific questions that they have regarding that, we're happy to provide that as well. It's certainly part of their open records.
The submitter also wondered or provided a suggestion if maybe that could be published in the Observer, or that considered at some point.
We'll certainly consider that. Thank you.
I want to be able to ask one more and then give each one of our presenters a chance to finish up and to be respectful of the time this evening. Again, Steve, to you, what could the Richland School District mill rate be if the district wasn't using defeasance?
Oh, that is a good question. I believe that we would be, John, do you know, top of your head?
6.
In the 6s? Yeah, I don't have the exact dollar amount, but somewhere in the 6s.
Okay. And for the individual that asked that question, again, if you would touch base with John or Steve, we could certainly get that answer. Well, let's move to the point, as we have moved through the vast majority of our questions, and give each one of our panelists tonight just an opportunity to speak. So let's start at the far end of the table with Al Lenz of the Simons Foundation Board, and then we'll just simply come right down the table.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. You know, it's nice to see a good turnout here. The one thing I would add is that the Simons Foundation Board has prepared a proposal for the use of the gym, which I think would be beneficial to both the community, and I think the school district would be very pleased to see that as well, and would work with them. So I hope that that's given consideration by the county, and we will be submitting that as soon as the window opens up.
Aaron Unbehan is the president of the Richland School District Board of Education. Aaron?
Yeah, good evening. Thank you everybody for attending. It's a time commitment, but getting informed and staying up to date is really, really important stuff. It's been a pleasure working with this group of people, cross-functional group, the collaboration, ideas, future thinking. I'm really excited to see what the future brings. Hopefully there's more of these forums to come to keep people up to date and informed. And if anybody ever has any questions, they can always reach out. Thank you.
Superintendent Steve Board of the Richland School District.
Once again, thank you for coming, and thank you to the folks that have put this together, not just the folks up here. There are many people behind the scenes. Dean did a tremendous job organizing a vast majority of this, along with Al. Joel Rewald has been a big part of this and been part of our sessions. Ashley and Candace, administrators at the county and the city. I'm sure there are others, but I want to thank you to them. Ron, again, thank you for being part of this as well. It's great to hear your voice again as well. And then thank you to the folks in the room. Again, I want to make sure that people are informed. I want to make sure that they get factual information and they know where to get your questions answered should they come up later, tomorrow, down the road, a month from now, a year from now, a decade from now. You at least have an idea of where you can ask those questions. Please stay informed and please get factual information out there, and let's try to get all of those arrows pointing in the same direction. Thank you.
Richland Center Mayor Todd Coppernoll.
Thanks. First of all, folks, round of applause for Mr. Fruit. I think you might have a future in communications, sir. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to, I got ill. All right. I wanted to just point something out. First of all, we couldn't do this if everyone here, seated here, wasn't a willing and open participant in the concept of open communication, improved communication. There was a time in the not so distant past when communications between the city and county were terrible, and that era is over. And I'm grateful for that. And now we have the school district a lot more engaged with us, and that's been a big help. I mentioned a couple of wins for the community that have already happened. I believe there will be more. But my takeaway from this day, we didn't know what we would get. This has not been done. So we put the two events together, and Dean did a lot of the legwork, thanks Dean, and we announced this. Well, we didn't know, would we get people or not? Would they be engaged or not? And so we answered a lot of questions today, but we got a very large and loud answer from the community too. The attendance was great, the attention was great, the questions were great. Obviously you wanted this. We will keep doing this, and I'm proud to be part of it. Thank you to everyone for coming.
County Board Chair Marty Brewer.
My main focus going forward in this discussion, or any discussion, is the taxpayer. Who owns the buildings out at the campus? We do, the taxpayer. Who owns the gym? Who owns Simon's? So let's get our stuff together and get the most good out of all of this discussion for the taxpayer.
Tracy Gobin, Director of Simon's Recreation Complex.
Good evening. Thanks for coming tonight, and thank you to Dean and the Simons Recreation Complex Foundation for putting this together. I also wanted to give a thank you to the City of Richland Center and Richland County for providing Simons as a community service for all these years. For 33 plus years, they've been providing Simons as a service to the community, and I wanted to say thank you to Richland County and the City of Richland Center for doing that for the community. It's a wonderful opportunity.
Economic Development Director Jason Glassbender.
Yeah, well, like this morning, I escaped questions and for the most part comment, but I really think that this forum and the collaboration that I'm seeing for the benefit of the economic future and health of the community, Richland Center and the county, is amazing. I'm involved in meetings on a consistent basis with Steve, with the county board chair, with the county administrator, the city administrator. And so right now I think there's a tremendous atmosphere for collaboration for the future, pooling good ideas or challenging each other with different ideas, trying to pool resources and come up with good solutions that assist the community in advancing economically. So a lot of these things that we've talked about do touch economic development, everything from housing that was mentioned to workforce retention and attraction, which my office is focused on, and then the different services or amenities that are available in Richland Center. And again, a lot of these things that we're talking about are exactly that. Simon's is an amazing asset to the community, and the gym at the campus, amazing asset to the community. And when we look at all those things and consider how it affects our community and the economic environment and the desire of other people to look at Richland Center and Richland County and say it's attractive, these are all very critical elements to, again, the health of our county and our city. And so glad to be a part where I can, and that's enough for me.
Attorney Windham.
Just again to reiterate, thank you for coming out tonight. I spoke in the morning session about the necessity that we have as elected, appointed, hired officials to hear from the community, not only to share news that we may have, but also to hear what your concerns, what your ideas are. Sure, there's a representation here, but at the end of the day, we can only serve because you've given us that authority, that responsibility, that gift in many ways. I appreciate you coming out tonight. Like I said this morning, the people who need to hear what I have to say aren't here, and you're here already. But if you have somebody who was hesitant, who couldn't make it, who doesn't think their voice is worth anything, or that we're not listening, let them know, we're all ears. We live here too. We want to make this community the best that it can be, and you are all a part of that.
Sounds good. Let's give our panelists a nice round of applause, shall we? I'm hoping that this has been beneficial for you, and I trust that it has. I mentioned this morning, there was a gentleman that I had the privilege of growing up with who liked to say, "My mind is made up. Don't confuse me with facts." And so I hope that you're not confused, that you can leave here today. And of course, this isn't a committee, this is a group. And to the best of my knowledge, doesn't have a name. And so I'm going to take a bold step and say that I really think we could call this effort Foresee the Future. Foresee the future, not the word foresee, but the number 4 and 4 C's that are communicate, cooperate, collaborate, and conquer. And in that regard, we'll all have a community we can be even more proud of than we are today. So go, be informed, spread the word. Thank you for attending, and best wishes.